Hey, good morning. This is Michael from Interstate PR. I know we didn't do a whole new world last week. It was a pretty crazy week for me, doing some stuff for some clients and fixing some things here to get stuff done. And schoolwork with the kids was crazy. But we're back this week with a whole new world. And today I actually have a friend of mine that I've known for 15, maybe 20 years, who we both met in the government affairs arena and have moved away from that for a while. And now he's actually running for city council down in the city of Carlsbad, California. And so I'm going to bring in my friend Phil Urbina. Hey, Phil, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are things down in Carlsbad?
Well, they're doing pretty well. We're quite fortunate here. We've got another beautiful day to spend mostly inside, but we've got a nice yard to spend out in the backyard. Sometimes I just take my computer and I work out there a little bit and take the dog for a walk, and we're just doing everything we can to survive physically and mentally healthy.
Yeah, it's a really difficult challenge right now to keep that mental health, right?
Mhm.
I know my kids are in week 9 or 10 or whatever this is now of shelter in place. My kids are going a little crazy, and they're a little bit they're growing tired of the trampoline in the backyard. They're growing tired of the basketball hoop in the front yard. They would love to be out playing baseball or football or something. And we have some room in our backyard, but not enough for them to play those sports. So it's kind of crazy, but I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing well. And Carlsbad is beautiful there, right? The joke about Chamber of Commerce days, right?
Yes, indeed.
So, well, hey, congratulations on running for city council.
Thank
Uh,
you.
that's an endeavor that's fun to take on no matter what. But now with COVID-19 and shelter in place, how has that changed the way that you're doing things with your campaign?
Completely. We, just like the rest of life, we did not expect to be where we're at right now. And our plans were for me to be out walking every day. And even before COVID, I would walk the dog every day. And my goal was to introduce myself to 5 people and hand them one of my business cards. And then, of course, we couldn't do that anymore. I can still walk, but I can't even get close enough to introduce people, give people my card, and nobody wants that right now. We're trying to maintain that distance, so makes it a little difficult. I will talk to people and I'll say hello and I might say something, and my website and everything is Phil for Carlsbad, and my Twitter and Instagram accounts are all Phil for Carlsbad. So hopefully they remember a little bit of that, but it certainly put a damper on things. We're just, as we're starting to come open now in Carlsbad and statewide, we're getting to the point where we feel like we can do anything. But we've been pretty shut down for the last 5-6 weeks. Actually, the last couple of weeks we started open up, but for 5 or 6 weeks before that, we were pretty much just doing nothing. You couldn't ask for money, and nobody wanted to talk about it. The only thing people could talk about was COVID-19.
Yeah, it's really hard, especially for those of you who don't know a lot of the inner workings of campaigns. It's all about interaction. So it's going out and meeting with people. You hear about fundraisers, but a lot of them are like town hall and coffee, like local neighborhood coffees as well. So you can get the opportunity to meet the candidate. And at this point, it's hard to do those things.
Sure, we've got a whole list of people that we wanted to do meet and greets with, and we go into their neighborhood and they invite some of their local friends, and you get an opportunity to talk with them, and they get a chance to meet you, and if they like you, they can vote for you, and maybe even contribute financially. And we can't do that now, so we're just starting to get to the point where we're like thinking about doing those again. We don't know if we'll be able to do those live or virtually, but we've scheduled our first one in June, and it may be virtual, it may be at a business, keeping everybody 6 feet apart, and so we're just planning for that. And if we have to have virtual meet and greets, then we'll do that, just like anything else. How do we react and how do we adapt is critical, because we can't change what we're in, and we just have to figure out the best way to work around it.
Yeah, and virtual meet and greets just don't have the same thing to it. You can't go and talk with a person one-on-one unless you're using a service that has breakout rooms, but then
Mhm.
you'd have to have somebody managing those breakout rooms. And yeah, it would be very awkward. It's almost, you hear that, and as a reformed political guy who's in the 12-step process, I'm still moving strong. I got my 2-year coin the other day. But seriously, it's one of those things you just cringe at. You're like, oh, it's such personal interaction with people. I mean, it's really odd. Speaking of virtual, though, are you utilizing, say, social media or other stuff more than you would have in a campaign prior to this or since this has happened?
I'm not sure I'd say more than, but certainly it is something that we're emphasizing more. We're doing it, but it becomes more important. We would have been doing it with other things, the meet and greets and the personal touches and, even shaking hands, which we can't do now. But it just becomes much more important to be able to use social media and reach out to people.
So down in San Diego, I think you guys were one of the first counties that had the face mask coverings. Is that right? Um,
Yeah.
and then a lot of other counties followed suit by saying that they were requiring face masks. And I've heard from friends down there. We've known each other for quite some time. We know a lot of the same people, and you've probably heard some of these horror stories too about people not wearing them and that type of stuff. As a candidate for city council, where do we draw the line on some of this stuff that I mean, where is it that the government starts to overreach? And the city council is, unfortunately, it all starts there, but it's also at the bottom of the totem pole, right? You've got the federal government way up here, you got the state government here, you've got the county government here, and then here's the city council. And it makes it really, really difficult to follow through on some of these things. And with this shelter in place as a statewide thing, right?
Generally, the city is required to follow guidelines from the state, and then the health department comes in from the county, and we have to follow the guidelines from the county of San Diego. So if the county says, you've got to close your parks, well, the city's required to do that. The city can be more stringent, but it can't be less stringent. So if the state and the county say wear masks, then the city is obligated to put that out as well. In some instances, it's been a progression. At first, it was like, well, some people thought, well, we can wear masks because we'll just feel better, and it wasn't required, and then it became required. But you'd go into grocery stores and people wouldn't be wearing masks, and now you go into grocery stores and people are wearing masks, and you go some places, they'll tell you if you don't wear your mask, you can't come in. I think to a large extent, it's really about us making each other comfortable and having.
Are you still there, Phil? I hope we didn't lose Phil's connection here. It looks like he may have been frozen. So,
Respect for each other.
there we
So
go.
if we're going to be inside, okay. So I think it's about making each other feel comfortable. When we're outside and we're walking, everything I've read and the studies I've read, if you just walk past something, COVID's not going to just jump from one person to the other. It's the prolonged time next to somebody and the chance that they might sneeze and cough. So we're far safer outside. So I was walking Friday night. We were doing the walk in the beach area, and I parked at my mother's house across the street, and we took a walk with my wife and my son and the dog. And half the people were wearing masks and half of the people weren't. And I always have my mask with me, but if I'm riding my bike or walking, I'm not going to have it on all the time. It's only when I'm there next to somebody close that I'll put it on. And some people are very uncomfortable with that. They want to stay away, and it's just it's been interesting to kind of get a feel for the mood, how it has changed from the first week. It seemed like we were all having, okay, we're all in this together, it's kind of fun, and then a couple of weeks later it seemed like everybody was really leery about other people. Even when I'd ride my bike past somebody, they didn't want to say hi, they didn't want to move away, and so we're all going through this process of figuring out how to deal with this and deal with each other.
It's been a weird weird thing, right? I mean, at first we were all like, okay, we get this. It's only going to be a few weeks to flatten the curve. And it's like, it seems as if we have flattened the curve, and then all of a sudden more restrictions come in. um, and I guess that was where I was going with the city council thing is, there's only so much that you can do, but you can put pressure on the levels above.
Mhm.
Uh, at some point, and I've seen this happen, and I mean, we both know Matt Hall, and I've seen some of the stuff Matt's posted, and he and I have communicated a little bit, but I know he's got a lot going on right now. But it seems as if it almost like it's almost like we're in some sort of military state. It feels like at times, and the local governments are starting to put the pressure. But do you think these local governments are going to get anything from the state and federal government when they keep pushing like they are? I mean, people need to get back to work, even if it's just for mental health,
Absolutely.
right?
So, and the hard part for me is that this has become somewhat partisan. I mean, and, people are adamant that we got to stay locked down, and people are adamant that, this is a freedom, and government shouldn't be telling us that. And I'm ready for us to be open, and I'm okay with the government having shut us down. I truly am, because I think we needed to do that. But I think we've reached a point now where we've been able to flatten the curve, and the cure is more dangerous than the sickness itself. Okay, we've got 30% unemployment in San Diego County now. All these people have lost jobs. Our packages from the federal government in the trillions of dollars. Our grandchildren will be paying for this, and people are having difficulty, and the people who are dying, and every single death is tragic, but the vast majority of those people have other conditions. And so those people who are in the vulnerable populations, in my opinion, they need to shelter, and they need to really be careful and take care of themselves. But the rest of us, we can go out there and be smart. We just don't have to run around, and we're probably not going to be shaking hands much these days. We're not going to be giving hugs as much these days in the future that might have been a normal part of who we are. And that's okay. We're going to be washing our hands more and doing things to protect ourselves as we need to. But there's a limit to how much we can shelter in place. It's like they told us a couple of weeks, and we were prepared for a 5K, and then they said no, it's a 10K, and then it became a half marathon, and now we're up to a marathon, and we're looking at ultra marathon. So at some point, our food chains have been disrupted. More people are dying in general, and not even from COVID, but because they're not going to the doctor to deal with their diabetes and their heart issues and other things because they're afraid to go to the doctor. People are going to, in my opinion, we're going to have more people starving in the future worldwide. And so while it certainly is taking a risk, and there's no doubt that as we open back up, we're going to have pockets of, where it's going to happen again, and we're going to need to address those. But we can't stay sheltered forever. There's no guarantee that we shelter for another month and it's going to be okay, and we shelter for another month after that and we're going to be okay. We need to start resuming our lives and managing this rather than just being hunkered down the whole time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. One of the things I notice is that they give these statistics, right? That, oh, it's a nice weekend out. People gone out over the weekend. We saw a dip in cases around Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday it spikes back up. But the one thing that they're not doing is they're not telling you as well is that we tested 30% more people during that time, and then we saw a spike when the test came back 4 or 5 days later, right? We were able to get our hands on more, and it seems as if the supply chain is around the middle of the week when they're getting more tests, and it takes a few days to get the results, and then all of a sudden you see that peak back up. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who lives in Louisiana, who was bringing up this point that you do see a peak, and a spike, but it happens to do with the supply chain. It happens to do with when the testing are. The state of Texas reopened, right? With several guidelines and everything, but they reopened. I think a lot of people in California would like to see something like what Texas has done, but then all over the news, it's well, Texas reopened and COVID cases spiked. What they didn't say is that between March and the end of April, they administered 300,000 tests, and from the beginning of May to now, they've also administered 300,000 tests. So, we have to look at those numbers too, right? And really compare those numbers. And
Well, it's like anything else, lies, damn lies, and statistics. People can bend those statistics any way that they want to suit their own narratives, and we see that happening all of the time.
so on the city council race, because you also do something that I would love to talk about because it's a very interesting subject to me, which is refereeing in youth sports. But um, Uh, and as a coach, I probably have yelled at people like you or something.
Yeah.
We have a disagreement on, but that's not what I want to talk about. As a city council candidate, you've talked about how the being able to interact with people is really not there. But I also noticed that you've gone out and you're supporting local businesses and that type of stuff. And that's really nationally, it's a big focus, and statewide, it's a big focus, and even at the county level, it's a big focus. But really where it hits hard and hits home is at the local area. How are you seeing in some of the businesses that you're talking with and interacting with social distancing, of course? How are you seeing this affecting local businesses, and what are some of your thoughts if you were already on the council? What are some of the thoughts that you might want to do on a local level to try to regenerate some buzz and excitement in the economy, especially in a place like Carlsbad, where tourism dollars right now is the time of year where people are there. I mean, they don't get the May gray June gloom thing, but they still come, right? What do you see might help out with that? What are you hearing from people that might help out with that?
Well, I'm proud that the city is doing its part and working with the Chamber of Commerce, and the city's actually put in, I believe, $5 million into trying to help local businesses. And I think what we need to do is we just need to impress upon on people the importance of shopping for that. You were talking about local sports, and I saw something on Facebook. Somebody said, remember that business that you asked to sponsor your kids' team? Well, now you need to sponsor them. They need some help. And so, my wife and I, we've been trying to shop. We honestly don't eat out that much, but we've been trying to, when we eat out a little bit more and picking our restaurants, the ones that are important to us that we want to make sure that they help stay in business. And we decided we weren't going to do DoorDash because we wanted the restaurant to actually get all the money rather than paying 20% commission to DoorDash. And then I was having sushi on Mother's Day. I was picking it up and I was waiting outside, and I was talking to a young man. He was 24 years old. He had been furloughed from Legoland where he had worked, and he was using DoorDash to survive. And it made me think, oh yeah, I guess there's some other people there, and DoorDash is important as well. So we just need to keep emphasizing the importance of using our local businesses. I'm like anybody else. I love Amazon. I shop at, in Amazon, but I know I'm not helping the local economy. And so if I can, I'm trying to stay local, help those local businesses. The Rotary Club I'm in, Carlsbad High Noon Rotary, we've just started a thing where once a week we're going out to lunch. Now, we have to maintain social distancing. We can't sit down inside. It's all takeout. But we pick out a restaurant and say, we're going to go there for lunch today. We're going to support that restaurant. And so, we're doing what we can. This week, we're going to be at Tin Leaf. The owners are friends of mine. I've talked to them, and they have 3 restaurants all in the same shopping center, and 2 of them have been closed. And they're working to keep their people taken care of. They've got 65 employees. Most of them aren't working right now, and twice a week they bring them in for family dinners to help feed them. and they've taken a pledge that any profits they make will be to pay their employees, pay their bills, and they're not taking any profits. So we've just got to help them so much right now because our economy is based on that. Here in Carlsbad, we have 20,000 jobs that are based on tourism, and the hotels are pretty much empty right now. We get a TOT tax of millions of dollars a year, and it's going to cost the city. In the fourth quarter, the city budget might be down $5 million, maybe as much as $11 million, because all those tourists come in and they not only spend the transient occupancy tax on the hotel, but then they shop at your local restaurants and your other stores. So there's just so much more involved in it. And that's money that can never be recovered again. If that hotel room stays empty one night, you can't just pick that up. And with social distancing and making people feel comfortable, we're just going to have less occupancy in hotels and restaurants. And so it's going to be all the much harder for businesses to be able to survive and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really hard spot. We don't eat out very much either. With 3 kids, it can get really expensive. But we've been really trying once a week to support a local business. Like you, we shop on Amazon a lot, but my wife pointed this out to me, I don't know, about a year and a half ago when she saw somebody post something online, like, don't shop at Amazon because of this, and this. And she's like, but Amazon, like a huge percentage of their resellers are small local businesses, and they're just distributing for them. And each place there's a distribution plant, they're employing tens of thousands of people to do that. So her point was, and this is what we try to follow, is look at who the seller is. If it's a large, major company, maybe try to find that. Maybe you're paying a little bit more to buy it from somebody else, but you're buying it from that local business that's making a little money off of it. It's like DoorDash, right? It's like keeping the door open for somebody and the lights on for somebody else is a really big and important thing, right?
Mm-hmm. So, I think it's incumbent upon businesses, just like campaigning, we've got to adapt. Businesses are going to have to adapt. And part of that is they're going to have to figure out ways to make us feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. Not only if it's separating a little bit, if it's making sure of this and that, if it's wiping down the booth before you sit down into it, that you can see it and feel comfortable. They're just going to have to be creative in that, I guess. And, if we feel comfortable, we're going to go.
Yeah. So segueing a little bit, talk about feeling comfortable. Youth sports, you do umpiring and refereeing, and youth sports. I mean, baseball seasons have basically been obliterated this year, right? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the professional level. They're fighting over money right this second, which is ironic to me. Live well within your means if you're making millions of dollars a year. That's all I have to say. I love baseball, but I'm a little frustrated with the players right this second with the idea that they want to get paid their full salary, even though the owners aren't going to be making as much money, and they're not going to generate the funds to pay those salaries by having fans there. But the big thing I see, and I'd love to get your input on this, is that, kids play sports, right? They play soccer, they play football, they play baseball, they play basketball, they play volleyball, all these things. And all of them, the seasons are getting stopped short. They didn't get started at all. They may not happen. How is that going to affect, in your opinion, the youth as we move forward in some of these sports and keeping them active? And I mean, that's where kids learn to love the sport, is by playing it, right?
I grew up in playing sports. When my kids were younger, I coached all their teams, their baseball, their softball, their soccer teams. And there's so much that I believe you learn from sports. You learn teamwork. You learn how to get along with people. You learn the value of practicing and work, sportsmanship, responsibility. I mean, there's so many things that you get out of that it's a tragedy that we're not doing this. And our kids, I'm afraid, are they going to come back and worry about being next to somebody? So I can't play soccer because I might be next to somebody next season. And just trying to stay healthy. We've got an obesity problem in this country. We need more sports. We need kids out there running around more and playing less on their computers. And this is going to make that more difficult. And I think even from the long term, to kind of take a little roundabout here, one of my big concerns is that kids these days have more allergies than they've ever had. And when I was growing up, you played out in the dirt, and you built up those immunities. And now we've got hand sanitizers, and we're working to keep our kids clean, and which I understand. But they're not building up those immunities, and this is going to exacerbate that. I was in the backyard the other day, and I was watering some plants, and my son, he's 20, he's home from college right now, doing online studies, and I asked him, did you ever drink out of a hose? And he's like, no. I mean, he's used to drink the, bottled water, or, water that's been filtered. And so we're in such a different world right now, and I'm afraid that 10 years from now, after we've worked so hard to keep our kids clean, that they're just not going to have the immunities, and we're going to have a lot of problems, more so. But back to sports, I just think we need to get them back out on the field, out on the pitch as soon as possible, because you learn so much, I think, in sports, how to get along, how to have fun, and do some things and be part of a team and a group.
Sure, and I think there are some sports that lend themselves to this. Like we were talking before we went live about how I coach flag football, and that's one of those things that, even though it's technically not a contact sport, these kids are so close to each other. I mean, they line up a yard away from each other. They're blocking. They're running routes downfield, and the cornerback's trying to get in. You can bump within 5 yards, and you're pulling a flag, and this, that, and the other. And it's very, very close. But soccer, when you're playing a soccer match, there's a lot of times where you're not very close to each other, right? You're I don't want to say chasing the ball, but you're following where the ball's going, right? And it's even at that, when somebody has the ball, you're not necessarily right up on them, because they can just kick it right by you. It's just kind of built-in social distancing there. Baseball as another sport where each position has its own spot on the field, and yeah, we see these crazy shifts nowadays, but even at that, they're not close together, because you've got to fill the hole.
And it kind of depends on the sport as well, and the age group. So if you're doing a high school soccer match, these people, they're old enough to know their positions, right? They're spread out. They want to spread out so that the ball can get to them and out on the wings, and so they're going to have more space. But when the kids are little, we have, the beehive, as we all refer to it. The ball's there, and all the kids are right around that. So you've got 8 kids right around that ball, because that's what they do. They don't understand yet the need to be separated and to have positions, and they're just not at that level. So it's just so many questions, and we're just going to have to figure things out as we go along. But youth sports is just such an important part of the development of our children.
And I 100% agree. It's also a great way for parents, as you mentioned, coaching. I have 3 boys. I've coached all of their baseball teams. There's only been a couple seasons where I actually haven't been part of one of the kids' teams, because now we have 3 kids in 3 different divisions. That was the nice thing about T-ball. The T-ball level was like you had like kids who were like 3 years in age, and then all of a sudden they start spreading out the age a little bit. It makes it so they're on the same division at the same time. But I mean, yeah, it's a really, really hard spot to be in, I think. And it goes back to what you mentioned earlier with local, right? Youth sports are local, run normally by volunteers, but it's also a revenue generator for these local volunteer groups to help continuing put on those things. And it helps the cities, because these youth sports programs are renting the fields from the cities, which helps pay for the maintenance to the fields. It helps local businesses, because they're able to go out and sponsor those teams. And with sponsorships, they get an advertisement for way less than they would have. And somebody feels an affinity to them, because their kid's jersey has the name of the business on the back of their their jersey, right? And contrary to popular belief, because I actually know one, I know somebody who just sells on Amazon who actually supports local youth sports. Um, so it's all these things that have this trickle down effect. And then, like I mentioned as we came on, my kids are going crazy right now, right? They want to go out and play on the trampoline, but only for so much. They would really love to go down to the park down the block and play baseball or play football or swing on the swings, but the
And
park
just
has
capitalize.
caution tape around it, right? You can't do those things at this point.
Just be
So
with
it's
your
really,
friends.
really hard.
Mhm.
Really, really hard. Now, you also, I know you have other things to do, Phil, and I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of your time. But you mentioned to me you're doing some other stuff on a personal level. And how is that? If you want to talk about that, I would love to hear how that's working right now, doing online assessments with people. And obviously, it used to be probably a little easier doing assessments, right? Because you
Yeah.
meet with them face to face to talk about it if they were in the area. But how has that kind of changed? Maybe the way that you're doing business as well, meeting with people, because people, as human nature, we like to meet with people, right? We like to sit down, even if it's having a cup of coffee and just chatting one on one. It's not the same doing it over
Right.
Skype call,
Yeah,
right?
but honestly, with our online assessments that we do, uh, they're online, so people can do them at home. It takes about 5 minutes, and it's pretty amazing the information that you can find out about a person, and they can find out about themselves. Uh, Pardon me, we use this tool called PDP Global with the company I'm working with, Opus Productivity, and we work to help companies manage and hire the right person, manage people better and hire the right people for the right jobs. And so it just gives you a look into the person's most natural personality, to what they like to do. And frankly, we do most of this over the phone anyway, because we've got clients all over the country. And so it's pretty rare for us to actually meet anybody. So that has an impact on our business, except you've got, businesses and, so many businesses struggling right now and they're not hiring. From that respect, of course, it has been an issue. But, we're adapting like everybody else. My Rotary Club, we've got 100 people. We're used to having lunch together at the West in Carlsbad every Monday. And now we get together for a Zoom call, and that's all we can do. So we're looking, and we have a Rotary. I still do more happy hours now than I ever did with friends, just to give us that connection. And I have, we're just trying to survive. I have a dear close friend who had a heart attack and passed last week. He was a deacon at our church, and just loved. And we're having a service for him on Thursday.
Mm.
And we're limited in how many people you can have. I mean, you can only have a couple people in the church. And he was loved. And so we're actually organizing, the casket's going to be out in the parking lot and people can drive past it. At some point we'll get back to normal, I suppose, and maybe be able to honor him appropriately for all he did. But it's just a terrible, terrible time for some people who are going through some of these life events, graduations, deaths, births, weddings. I had a friend, her son was getting married. They were expecting to have 250 people, and instead they had 5, and do a reception there. So this is the kind of stuff we'll be studying about, and our kids will be studying in their history books, and we're just adapting. And I think there will be long-term consequences with this. I firmly believe that firms that didn't want to have people working from home are finding that a lot of those people can work from home. And not only are they as productive, in some instances, they can be more productive. And so with those businesses, if you're used to having a building for 100 people and paying that kind of rent and that kind of money for desks and computers and all the things that are affiliated with that, if half those people can work from home, you're going to save yourself quite a bit of money. So I think businesses are going to adapt that way. I think it'll be a while for us to figure that out. but some of our traffic issues, I think are going to be lessened just as we continue to try to get more and more people working from home.
Yeah, it'll be a very interesting situation. I mean, I work from home, fortunate to own my own business, but it also has its downsides, right? Crystal and I were just talking about this last night about how, as the owner of my own business, and you probably run into this yourself too, is that you're always on.
Mhm.
So whether it's Tuesday at 10:30 or it's Tuesday at 11 p.m., if you get a message or something from a client, you're like, oh, okay, I should take care of this. I'm here. And, that office is right there. And it's kind of got that drawl to it. In fact, I've gone to Disneyland and I've actually done work on my phone in line at good on to a ride at Disneyland. So I think we're going to see that as something that people are going to need to work with on that work-life balance. I think you make a really good point, though, that businesses are going to have to adapt. And I think what we're going to see too is, and I've been saying this since this all happened, that when this happened, this is really going to frame how people look at other people, at businesses, and the way you reacted and the way you did things is going to set how people look at you in the future. So if you were a business that, if you were one of my small clients who's a restaurant who, and I don't have a client that did this, I advised them against it, but they were like, we're going to take out all of our employees who have access to our social media because we don't want them posting anything negatively. Well, that's going to reflect negatively on those businesses in the future, right? It's the way we treat people and stuff like that. I think this is going to make us take a step back 20, 30 years to how we used to treat people. I just learned a new term the other day. I don't know if you've heard this, called phubbing. Have you ever heard of phubbing? So
No.
phubbing is when somebody, you're in a conversation with somebody and they pick up their phone and they pay more attention to the phone than to you. You're being snubbed for a phone.
Right.
Apparently, there was a huge study about this, and in 2012, an Australian firm coined the frame phubbing, and they did this huge marketing campaign all over the entire continent about no phubbing. And it's really interesting that now in these times, and almost exactly what you were talking about, is that people are going to need to take a step back. They're going to need to look at things. Companies are going to need to take a step back, and they're going to need to be like, you know what? That person probably doesn't need to be connected to their email all the time.
Yep.
We don't need to give them a phone and have a policy where they have a cell phone for the company. I mean, it's getting so predominant nowadays that companies want you to sign something, or they give you a phone. They want you to sign something saying that I will use my email on my phone and accept your policies, right? I think people are going to take a step back from that. They're going to be like, you know what? You can work from home, but watch what you're doing. You don't need to have it on your cell phone. We're going to set you up with something, whether it's a laptop or a Microsoft Surface or a tablet of some sort that you can go home. You can plug into a docking station and you can work from home. And I think you're absolutely right the way it is. And it's just how we adapt to that. And I even think cities were going to start adapting to that type of policy as well.
But I think we have to have boundaries. And listening to some podcasts about working from home, one of the recommendations that they make is that you separate your work area from your non-work area. So my wife's working from home right now. She doesn't normally do that. She's working from home through the COVID thing, but so she's working in our living room. That's her office now, on our dining room table. When she's done working, she comes into the office here with her other personal computer, and then she can do her emails here. So there's a mindset difference. It's a different location. I know for some people, they say, establish that routine. Get up, take your shower, brush your teeth. At 8 o'clock, you sit down, you do this, and you just establish your work day. And then when the work day's done, you walk away from it, type of stuff. Because it is very easy to get sucked into that 24/7 working, because I might as well just respond to that. And I can tell you, running for city council right now, I get my emails, and between that and some of the other organizations that I'm involved with, it's like a constant chain. And sometimes we just, need to set it aside and move on. You forget your phone and you go to the grocery store and you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have my phone with me. And there's that little bit of trepidation. Like, it's okay. I think I can handle this being away from my phone for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's almost nice to actually forget your phone sometimes, right? I know that I personally I have do not disturb set up on my phone. After 5:30 at night, my phone kind of lives in my bedroom. I check on it every once in a while. It lives in the bedroom because I'm not in my bedroom. I'm out hanging out with my kids and my wife. And then when I go to bed, our bedroom has a windowsill that's kind of larger, and my phone goes the furthest away from the bed on that windowsill, and I don't check it until I get up in the morning. Um, and working at home, I kind of naturally wake up anyways around 7:30, 8 o'clock. I don't set an alarm anymore. I get up, I brush my teeth, I shower, I have my cup of coffee, and then I get into my work. You're absolutely right. There's a routine that people, and you have to build that in yourself. And those are the positive things I think we can take out of this whole situation of COVID-19 and shelter in place, is that we can um, work on ourselves by building routines and habits. I mean, it's a routine and habit, right? A habit is just something that you do over and over again. It's something it becomes a routine for you, and the more we can do that, the better. I mean, there's no use complaining about stuff we don't have any control over at this point. Um,
We can react.
so and it's like, so you mentioned with city council, I mean, that's kind of a 24/7 job anyways, especially running for office. But you're right, you have to take the time back, because if you don't, you just become a tired, disgruntled candidate. It keeps you fresh and in the mindset, and it gives you the time to reflect personally on why you're doing it. So for people who have never run for office or think about running for office, that's a great thing to remember. And I think that's a really great tip that Phil gave, is distance yourself from it for just a little bit, because you'll remember why you're doing it. You'll start thinking about, oh my gosh, what am I missing? And you'll think to yourself, well, you know what? My elected officials don't get back to me right away because they're really busy. But then when they do get back to it, they recognize why they're doing that type of stuff. And you know, it's a definite thing that needs to be done.
And it's an expectation. And we used to make a phone call, leave a message, and we'd expect to get called in the next 24, 48 hours. And, with an email, we expected a response sooner. And now, you text, and the first thing you're doing is you're looking, well, not yet. If it's 5 minutes and they haven't texted you back, you're kind of like,
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because I'm in that generation that's kind of like the Zennial generation, not quite a Gen Xer, not quite a millennial. My birthday falls right in that sweet spot where it would be one way or the other, right? But growing up, especially in the business setting, I was always taught, you get a telephone call, you return it within 24 hours, same day if possible. An email, you should be able to respond immediately to it. And then text messages started coming on, and was like, well, you should be able to respond to a text message like instantaneously. It's one of those things. And when I was a district director and a chief of staff, I always instilled that in my staff, like, hey, communications is the number one thing. You have to respond right away. And now we're seeing that doing that just keeps us connected all the time, right?
But there's also an issue here where we're constantly interrupted when we're trying to do something. And so I have a friend of mine, and she's just an extremely talented person and hardworking. And her best time is from 7 to 10 o'clock. She gets in the office way earlier than that. You call her before 10 o'clock, and she just doesn't take calls, because that's her time to focus. You call her up, you text her, you leave a message, you can expect a call after 10 o'clock, because she is just focused on whatever she needs to be doing. She does taxes. And so many times we just get interrupted constantly while we're trying to focus on writing something, doing our taxes, doing this, something that needs our attention. And so sometimes we just have to carve ourselves out some time and say, I'm not going to go ahead and just respond immediately to this. I have to take care of this. A friend of mine from baseball, he was a coach. On his signature, he had a quote that said, "The quickest way to do many things is to do one thing at a time." I've tried to remember that myself.
It's very true. one of my uncles is a mechanic, and he said, when he was younger, he used to try to do all these things really, really fast and get them all done. And then something would always happen and go wrong. And he said, as I got older, I realized if I just do one part of the job at a time and I do it at a consistent pace, I don't drop as many tools. There's not as many problems that I have to go back and spend more time to fix. I just do it in one consistent pace and make sure I know I'm doing all the steps. I get it done. It's the same concept of doing one thing at a time. We get it all done. You and I both know a guy who used to do that, Ted Owen. He used to get in the office at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I remember having committee meetings that I chaired, and I get there and Ted was there. And, I asked Ted why he got in so early. He's like, oh, I'm a Marine and that's what we do. But he said, honestly, it's because I can sit in here and I write like 3 articles a month for different publications, including our own. And nobody's here to bother me. Nobody calls. I'm not getting emails. The emails I do get are junk emails. I can just sit here in my own space, think about what I want to do the research I want to do, and write.
You look at some of the NFL coaches, they've talked about, well, we can't see the players and we're doing this and I'm working home virtually and we're having all these, Zoom meetings and stuff like that. They're saying, but you know what? I'm getting a lot of stuff done because I'm not having people come into my office and bug me and I got to stop all the time. You can focus on it. So.
Yeah, I've actually found that and my wife has found the same thing. She's a little less productive because we have 3 other office mates who need our help, but they're more productive. They're done with school and my kids go to Catholic school, and we've been really, really blessed to send them to Catholic school. Making a sacrifice is 100% the right thing, especially right now when I think when we spoke the other day, I told you this, that my kids on March 13th, we found out they were not going back to school for at least 2 weeks. On Sunday, March 15th, we had emails from all 3 of their teachers with their assignments for the next day saying this should take your kids 3 to 5 hours of work to get it done. And they've had Zoom. I mean, I had 2 of my kids right now who were on. One was on a Google Hangout with his teacher. The other one was on a Google Hangout with his teacher. And the third one has a Google Hangout with his teacher in about 20 minutes. And they're doing classes. And honestly, they spend 3 hours worth of work in the morning. They get up at 8 o'clock. We've printed all their stuff out the night before. They go in, they get their breakfast. I mean, my youngest is 6, so my oldest 10 helps them a little bit. They get their own breakfast. They sit down and they eat breakfast and they do their work. By noon, they're done. They're way more productive right now than they were at school. Now, they're not getting the interaction. They're not playing around like they would at school, but they're getting the schoolwork done. And that's, I think, at this point, that's the most important thing. So that when they go back to school next year, and our diocese has already said, hey, they're going to be back in school. We think it's going to be all students all day. That's the goal. We're not sure, but that's the goal. But they're up to speed. I mean, everybody's being promoted to the next grade level. They don't have to start going back to school in June, July to get caught up and hopefully start the school year on time. If not, then it's going to, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in public education. I really don't. But to what you were saying, that's exactly what's going on with the Catholic schools. We're seeing more productivity out of the kids. I think my middle son is killing it. He's loving this. He gets to work at his own pace. He doesn't wait for anybody else. He's just, I say this as a father and biased, but he's wicked smart. Uh-huh. And I mean, his test scores for these like STAR testing and so that, he's like in the 99th percentile, and there's no little movement on the thing. You know how sometimes it shows a little. His is just at the very top the whole time in math and reading, and it's like, and he always tells us it's so boring at school. It's so, and you see he's doing well. Now he moves at his own pace, just moving his own pace, doing his own thing. He's like, he wrote his teacher a message the other day through one of the apps that they use, asking if he could get stuff that they would be doing to prepare for next year, because he didn't have enough stuff to do at home now. It's like, Jacob.
When my son was younger and coming home from elementary school, it's like a 4-minute drive from school, and he'd be doing homework on there.
Yeah.
He was mad because his sister, 2 years older, had more homework than her. So.
That is definitely my middle son. My oldest son will do homework in the car too, just so that when he can get home, he can play.
Yeah.
My youngest son's like, oh, whatever. I'm in first grade. I have like 10 minutes worth of homework. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. It'll be interesting when things start really reopening up, and I hope that, I mean, some of the conversation we've had is bouncing around a little bit, but one of the things I really hope, especially when we're looking at the the governance side of all this, is that they really pick something and they stick to it. And I hope, and I haven't heard too much of this, but I hope that the governor is not just making these things willy-nilly and talking to people based upon scientific data. He's really going in and talking to like the restaurant association and saying, well, what guidelines do you hearing from your members that we can put in place that would help us open things back up? Talking to the local governments, like, what can we do to start opening these parks back up within your municipality that you think that because every place is different, right?
And we're
That
seeing with the rural counties in California are far different than LA and San Diego and San Francisco.
Well, Carlsbad, which is like without traffic, is a 30-minute drive from San Diego, right? Is different than the city of San Diego is.
Absolutely.
You know, North County is different than South County. It's just the way it goes.
So more local control is better, you know, truly, because we have different issues and we can respond differently. And you know, a few weeks ago, that you could play golf in Escondido and you couldn't take a cart, but you could play golf in Temecula in Riverside County and you could take a cart. It was, you know, it's like some inconsistencies, but you know, we're trying and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're seeing progress in the right way. You know, it's interesting because it is during a campaign season. And like I said earlier, as a recovering political guy, it's interesting to see. And I in some ways, I'm kind of glad I'm not part of it right now, because I can only imagine how things are going. Strategy meetings have to be done in a different way. It's precinct walking and that type of stuff. You know, we all know that mail pieces don't work as well as actual walk pieces work. So it's and to that, while social media works, it's still not as good as meeting somebody in person. It just doesn't ring the same thing. So it's very, very interesting. I know you mentioned this earlier, and I want to bring it in now, that you were talking about your website. And there it is. Nice picture. Actually, I like the campaign design as well. But Phil's website here, Phil, the number 4, Carlsbad, and as you can see, he's actually got a ton of information on here with resources for COVID-19. Not only worldwide resources with the World Health Organization, the CDC, California, but the city of Carlsbad, the school districts that cover the area as well. And, you know, it's just like local businesses. You got to support your local candidates even more, because it's going to be even more difficult for them to run at this point. Is there anything that you wanted to point out specifically on your website, Phil?
Yeah, I would drop a little lower on that page.
Okay.
There you go. I coach 25 or so of my kids' teams, and very proud of that. Just, you know, service to the community. And those kids are all now of voting age, so hopefully they'll vote for me. I did my best to help them, and I wasn't always the best person at knowing exactly how to field a ground ball, but I was the guy who was always the one talking to them and trying to make sure that they had fun. That was my most important job, is to make sure they enjoyed the game, and it was a blessing to be able to do that. You never get those things back, Kevin, and I know you know this, Kevin, Michael, you know this because you do it. The amount of time you put into those things, coaching your kids, it's just such a blessing. And you know, when you're with your kids, the days are long, but the years are short.
Very true. It's a labor of love. I don't know. Did you ever find this? The worst part I found about coaching my own kids is that I'm actually working with other kids more than I'm working with my kids. My kids already know my style and what I'm looking for. And all these people always tell me, "Oh, it's a great way to spend time with your kids," and I always do it, and I'm like, not spending a ton of time with my kids. I'm spending time with all these other kids, trying to teach them the things. And I get it. I'm not the perfect coach. I'm not the best coach, and I'm right there with you. My goal of coaching is hopefully the kids learn a little bit about the game, but they fall in love with the game. Whether
Absolutely.
I'm teaching them what somebody thinks is the right way or not, that doesn't matter to me. Is that they fall in love with something, and that it becomes an integral part of their life. Like they can turn around and say, you know what, I love baseball, and I remember playing with a coach, and maybe don't even have to remember me. I remember playing with a coach who made it fun,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
that's where I fell in love with the game.
Totally agree. And for me, it was always about teaching them sportsmanship and the value of working and losing and winning and just being out there and having fun.
Yeah, I'm really big on teamwork. And sportsmanship, definitely the value of being on a team, I think, is the number two thing for me. And my kids always hate it when I do this, but I'm like, hey, I want you as a team to run down there and run back. And like, inevitably there's one kid that sprints, and inevitably there's another kid that walks, and I'm like, is this as a team? And they're like, well, we ran over there and we came back. I'm like, but did you start and finish as a team? It's about a team. You're only as strong as your strongest and weakest person on that team. So if you're sprinting to the front and he's walking, why don't you run with him at a slower pace and help him run and get there? They hate it, but usually by mid-season, they're all running together as a team because they don't want to run anymore, and they know I'll just make them run until they get there. Um,
Yeah.
which is also great for conditioning too. I hope none of my players, especially my football players, which probably won't happen this year anyways, aren't watching this, because it's a secret to conditioning those guys too, to get them so that they've got that lung capacity and that type of stuff. I know we were talking before we came on about sports and football, and you mentioned earlier about riding your bike with masks and that type of stuff. And I mean, it's hard. You can't breathe with those things on.
No, and I keep my
Doesn't
mask
help out
off
with
when I
conditioning.
go to ride. I'm not going to wear it on my bike. It's not a danger on my bike. If I stop and I went into a restaurant, I'd have a mask with me.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing. It's also a great thing to point out. I mean, if you look at this, and Phil and I met because I worked at the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce, and he worked for Adelphia, right?
Adelphia, yes. Daniels and Time Warner went through a few iterations, but yes.
Yeah, and we met because I think we were doing a city council um, debate or something like that, and you helped me get it together and put it on, and we kind of produced it and got it directed live and everything. It was a live show, and then obviously you were on the board and a bunch of different things too. But Phil has a lot of experience in the local community. He's done a lot of great things. I think one of the coolest things that you do is the Carlsbad Christmas Bureau. Um, that's an awesome thing.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I wish more communities had stuff like that. And in Carlsbad, it's very prevalent. A lot of people know about it. Other communities, they have it. It's just not as well known, but it's a great thing. It helps out a lot of people, and it makes people's lives a little bit better during what can be a really difficult time of year. And honestly, I think COVID is a little bit like the holidays, right? Um, it's a time you're very lonely. People are kind
Right.
of just put in their little groups right now. Like the holiday season, we all get in our little groups of our family and close friends or whatever, and we kind of see those people and get together. And that's kind of how we are during things right now.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just
even
virtual.
even even less, right? Because normally you would see extended family, and you really can't. You're really not supposed to do that right now.
Right.
So just those type of things really can make people feel better. I know Phil's done a lot of that, and it's something to think about right now too during this time that people do need that help. The Zoom calls and having lunches together, going to a park and sitting 6 feet apart. Even if you're sitting on the grass with a blanket and somebody's 6 feet away from you and you're eating lunch together, you still get to see some of those people you care about. It really is hard with the things like funerals and that type of stuff, or baptisms, weddings. This is changing people's whole world.
Well, Michael, I would, for the last thing, I would point to my, if you look at my website, there's a quote there from Bill Daniels. And it's a quote, that has meant a lot to me. Bill Daniels is probably right at the very beginning on the front page, and it's something that has meant a lot to me. I used to work for Bill Daniels. He was known as the father of cable TV. If you go to just the very, isn't it there? Anyway, I don't know, but I've used this as my signature on my emails for a number of years, and I think it's just something that's important to me. But it was a Bill Daniels quote, says right there on the bottom, imagine a world. Yep. Imagine a world where people give of themselves simply because they want to, not out of a sense of duty or because they want something in return. No ulterior motives, no guilt feelings, just the desire to give for the sake of giving. Now, instead of imagining this kind of world, do your part in making it happen. Make a charitable donation. Volunteer your time to improve your community. Give back to the world that gives so much to you. And if it happens to make you feel good, that's all right. Feeling good is the one ulterior motive that's acceptable. So that's why we do it, right? We coach because
Wise words.
we help out the Christmas Bureau or the Boys and Girls Club because it makes us feel good to help other people, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it's what I mean. I know both you and I are Catholics and member of the Knights of Columbus, and we do a lot of stuff with our parishes. And it's the whole idea of stewardship, right? The whole idea of stewardship is not necessarily just to write that check to drop in the collection plate. It's to actually give your time, talent, and the treasures people focus on is money all the time. But really, the biggest treasure you can give is yourself. It's really the time and talent that you have equals your treasure. Now, sometimes your treasure, your time and talent builds financial treasure, which then you can share with other people. But it's really about the time and talent that equals the treasures that you can give. And the more you can do, the better. And I mean, obviously, just by knowing you, but looking at your campaign side, if people don't know you, you clearly do that, man. You do a great job. And as you know, I've told you this before, I've always been so impressed with the things that you do and the way you carry yourself. And I really appreciate that. You know, you and I have gotten to know each other over the years. We've not only hung out business wise, but we've done a few social things together too. I've heard some great stories about Jimmy Buffett and some other things. Yep. You and my wife and your wife are big parrot heads. Yep. So, but yeah, I think it's great what you're doing, man. I really commend you for also taking the time to run for city council. It's a big endeavor, and it takes a lot of who you are to put into that to do it. You know, you're doing some great things, great advice, great things to talk about today on all gamuts, political, business wise, socially. You know, I'm glad to hear that you and your family are doing well. I know you said your daughter is in Nebraska still, and your son is back home.
Junior at Santa Clara University.
Yeah, is he missing the Bay Area at all?
Not so much the Bay Area. He's missing his friends and just being on campus. But he's fortunately, he's actually writing a book. He's finishing his book. I'm editing it for him now on personal development for young people. So he's been pretty motivated and it's given him something to do. Now I'm trying to edit it. You know, he's doing a great job and we're pretty proud of him. And my daughter, she graduated from Creighton a year ago and she's working there and doing really well and all good. We're very fortunate. Blessed.
That's awesome. And yeah, I grew up like 15 minutes away from Santa Clara University. My sister is actually a SCU alumni. So it's a great area. And the weather's a little bit different. There's no beach right nearby, but it's kind of an awful North County feel down in the South Bay. You know, there's a lot more high tech, I guess, there, whereas in North County, there's a lot more biotech, but in some ways they're similar, right? But yeah, it's a great place. There used to be a place called Cluck You Chicken. I think they've changed the name. You've probably been. It's over by Safeway behind the...
I know where the Safeway is.
The Safeway, there's a little chicken place next to it. It's not called You anymore. But when your son goes back, You got to check it out. It's one of the. They make their chicken fresh. It's all like fried chicken. They fry it fresh and everything. They've got probably 15, 20 TVs, and they have baseball season, football season, basketball season. They have a bunch of different games on from all over the place. It's a very popular college hangout. It's for it's right next to the Safeway, but right over by Stuffed Pizza too. So I forget what it's called now, but it used to be called Cluck U. Everybody went to Cluck U. So, and I know they ripped down like the Hut over there, which was a really popular bar. But you know, it is what it is. So, but Phil, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to me today. I know you got tons of other things to do, and I've got a child who I'm supposed to help out with work for his school today. So we do it every day together. But I really appreciate the time. It's great seeing you. Glad to hear that you're doing well. I wish you the best of luck with your city council race. It doesn't matter because I don't live there, but if I did live there, I would totally be behind you 100%, and would give you my full endorsement. I've known Phil for several years. I know he's a good guy. I know he has the best of intentions. I also know that he loves Carlsbad, and that's something that's always been on the city council, and that the city council continues to need. And they need, my opinion, for whatever it's worth for people, but they need people like you on the city council in Carlsbad. So best of luck. And I'll be watching the race. It's part of this. I'm still in the 12-step program. It's the one step I can't get past is looking at the Secretary of State and the registrar of voters pages on election night. I still stay up until like 1 o'clock in the morning hitting refresh. All right. You can't just kick, but I really appreciate it, Phil. Best of luck, and I hope to talk to you soon. And when I'm down there next, I'll give you a call.
Take care. You betcha.
Right. Thanks.
Bye.